Welcome everyone to Totally Online Gaming Group's YouTube channel. We're glad you guys could join us for episode 7 in my Dungeons & Dragons for Beginners series. In this episode, we're going to talk about feats and ASIs, or ability score increases. Just when to do them, when they get chosen, how to choose the right ones for you and your character, and a bunch of other things. But before we do that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and type subscribed in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get back to each and every one of you that does. Now on to the meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about this time. Feats and ASIs. Okay, so we are currently looking at our example character, which we have used in some of the previous videos, that is just a simple human fighter and is level 1. Well, as we go through this character, when you're building them in D&D Beyond, it makes it fairly easy to see when you get a feat or an ASI and the choices that you have available to you. So right here we can see our fighter, who is level 1, and some of their class features. Well, we're going to go ahead and increase their level to 20. This way we can see everything that happens through the level progression of a fighter. So as we go down through, here we see our first ability score improvement. Okay? They say improvement, I call it increase. It's basically the same thing. But it's our first ASI. And this, we can see one choice at 4th level. When you click on this, it's going to open up and show you, hey, when you reach 4th level, and again at 6th, 8th, 12th, 14th, 16th, and 19th, you can increase one ability score of your choice by 2 points, or you can increase 2 ability scores of your choice by 1 point each. As normal, you can't increase an ability score above 20 using this feature. So wait a minute, I was in a game the other day, and one of the other players had a character that had a score that was higher than 20. But here it just said I can't go higher than 20. Well, this is something in 5th edition that's called bounded accuracy. Bounded accuracy means that in all normal conditions, they are limiting the top level that any of your ability scores can get to 20. There's a reason they do this. This is so that the game doesn't get way too out of hand. Well, for some of the older players, maybe you've played edition 3.5 or 4 or even the originals, 1st edition or AD&D or any of those others. One of the things that if you talk to them, they'll talk about how things kind of got out of hand or can get out of hand unless the dungeon master puts a lid on things. By that I mean you can make characters that are just game-breakingly powerful. So much so that being a dungeon master and trying to run games against characters that are that powerful, it actually becomes a chore, because you have to create all new stuff to deal with characters that are so powerful that they can basically just defeat the gods. Well, by instituting a bounded accuracy, it limits your scores to 20 or below. That kind of prevents some of that from happening. However, they did include other things, certain magic items or class features that will allow an ability score to actually go above 20. But it's only using those special things. So there is ways to get higher than 20, but you cannot do it using an ability score improvement. Okay? So that is something to note. So why would I want to choose an ability score improvement? What does it do for me? Well, let's take a step back and look at our character sheet again. For example character, our now 20th level fighter. You'll notice here are their main stats: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And you'll see that each one of these stats has a number assigned to it based on what we built it as. Well, for fighters, strength is really important because if you're using, say, a greatsword or something big and heavy, like a big two-handed weapon, your ability to hit and how much damage you do is going to be affected by how strong your character is. So the higher your strength score, the higher strength modifier you get. Therefore, the easier it's going to be to hit a target, and the more damage you're going to do when you hit a target. Other things like, well, let's say a wizard. A wizard casts spells using intelligence. Well, a low intelligence is not good for a wizard because it means it's going to be more difficult for them to effectively use their spells against an enemy. The higher their intelligence score, the higher their modifier, and therefore the more effective they will be with their spells. So increasing your stats is going to affect many different things and many aspects about your character that can help you quite a bit. For example, increasing my dexterity. Let's say I'm going to play a halfling rogue that likes to stab people with his daggers. Well, daggers actually work based off of dexterity. They are a light finesse weapon, which means my ability to hit with them and do damage is going to be based off of my dexterity. Additionally, your armor class is going to be based off of dexterity depending on what kind of armor you're wearing. And we'll talk about equipment and stuff in a later video. So the dexterity score, the higher that is for a little halfling rogue who's using a finesse weapon, the better chance they have to hit with that weapon, the more damage they can do, and the higher their armor class is. So increasing your ability scores helps you in lots of different ways. It also will help you with your skills and your saving throws. So that's a reason to increase ability scores. So let's go back into our editing of our fighter here, example character. So we see at that 4th level, they can now choose to increase their ability scores. And you'll notice there is this drop down that says choose an option. From here I can choose either ability score improvement and feat. So if I want to improve an ability score, I click on ability score improvement. Notice it fills it in right there. And then I can choose which 2 ability scores get 1 point each, or if I want one of my ability scores to get 2 points, I just pick it twice. Well, for my fighter, who's got currently a strength of 16, let's say I want to increase that. So I'm going to click on choose an ability score, and I'll pick strength score. And I'll do that for both of them. So now 2 points go into my strength score, so my fighter's strength just went from a 16 to an 18. And if I look on his character sheet, you'll notice it now says 18 up here, and my strength modifier went from a +3 to a +4. So now his ability to hit has increased, as well as the damage he does. Going back into our editing, let's see where our next ability score improvement is. Right here, at 6th level. Well, instead of an ability score, this time I am going to choose the option of feat. What if instead of an ability score, I wanted to choose a feat? Well, what exactly is a feat? A feat is a special thing you can do, or a special feature that you can choose that gives you some kind of special attack or some advantage or some skill that you can do specific to choosing that feat. Clicking on the drop down, it will list out a ton of them. And again, you may not be able to see it in the video. Sorry, don't know why it's not showing that. But when I click on that, I can choose from a whole bunch of different feats that are available. For example, what if I want my fighter to be really good with big weapons? Well, there's one called Great Weapon Master. Once I have chosen a feat, it will show up in the list here, and it will describe what that does for me below. So we can see here, it says when I choose Great Weapon Master, it says you've learned to put the weight of your weapon to your advantage, letting its momentum empower your strikes. You gain the following benefits. On your turn, when you score a critical hit with a melee weapon, or you reduce a creature to 0 hit points using a melee weapon, you can make one melee weapon attack as a bonus action. Oh, well, that's pretty good. So let's say I've got this big, say a great axe that I'm using. Well, I've got this big melee weapon. I got my great axe, and I chop down one of the enemies. Maybe I'm fighting some goblins, and I cut one in half. Oh, well, there's one right next to it, and I still haven't used my bonus action, and I just reduced that one to 0. Hey, I could use my bonus action to hit the next one. So that's something that helps out. It gives you an additional attack doing it that way. And that also works on a critical hit. Additionally, this feat says before you make a melee attack with a heavy weapon that you are proficient with, you can choose to take a -5 penalty to the attack roll. If the attack hits, you add +10 to the attack's damage. Ooh, now that sounds nice. What if I'm fighting something that I am pretty positive that even if I roll kind of low, I'm still probably going to hit? I can say, you know what, I'm going to take that -5 penalty, and then if I do hit, now I do my weapon's damage, plus my normal bonus, plus 10 more points of damage to that attack. So that can really hurt. So that's something that I've chosen to do. So I've got, yep, my Great Weapon Master. Now, how do I know if I want to choose a feat or if I want to choose an ability score improvement? Well, that just depends on you. How do you want your character to be? Do you want them to have really, really high stats and dump all of your ability score improvements into increasing your stats? Or do you want them to be able to do special additional things like this Great Weapon Master? It depends on your character. My recommendation, as you're building your character, go ahead and look through the list of feats. Look through what different ones there are and what ones might be fun for you to use as your character. If you have questions on them, ask your Dungeon Master. Some of them aren't necessarily the greatest. Some of them are really good. So, always ask your Dungeon Master if you have questions. Or, go ahead and ask questions in the comments below in this video, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about ability score improvements and feats is that each class is different. For this fighter, if you'll take a look, we've gotten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ability score improvements. Not every class is going to have that. Let's take a look at a different class. For example, let's reduce our fighter back to first level. And instead, let's add another class. Let's go ahead and add, let's try a bard. Add this class. And let's see if I make this bard level 19 and look at its class features. How many ability score improvements do I get from the bard? In fact, let's remove our fighter altogether and put this bard up to level 20 so we can count how many ability score improvements there are for the bard. We had 6 for the fighter. Here's the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 1 less with a bard. So not all classes will get the same amount of ability score improvements. This is something to balance the classes. Fighters don't always have the best things to choose from, just a straight fighter. So giving that straight up like 20th level fighter, an additional ability score improvement helps them to become a little bit better so that that class can be a little more balanced compared to the other classes. Well, that's going to be it for this video, as we talked a little bit about feats and ability score improvements. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the comments. If you have suggestions for future videos that you'd like to see, I'd love to see those in the comments as well. And I hope to see you next time. Bye, everybody.